Hi everyone. Welcome back. This is Jose. In this lecture we're going to implement user login. Let's take a look at the login screen implemented in a React web application. A user reducer will keep track of who's currently logged in a state variable called current user. The current user will be set by a thunk if the server responds with a successful login. All components can then select the current user from the state to configure the user interface for the current user. The user reducer will populate the current user in the store, and then we can provide the store to the rest of the components in the application. The browser router configures several routes to navigate to different screens such as the login, sign up, and profile screen. They can all select the current user from the store and adapt the user interface based on who is logged in. The login screen captures credentials as username and password to post to the server to log in. When the user clicks the login button, the login screen dispatches the credentials to the login thunk, and then navigates to the profile screen. The login thunk dispatched by the login screen sends the credentials to the login service function and waits for the response from the server. The user service is responsible for communicating with the server. Axios needs to be configured to include cookies in the request headers to support credentials and sessions. The login service function posts credentials to the login HTTP endpoint to be handled by the user controller. If the login is successful, the controller will log in the user and respond with the currently logged in user embedded in the HTTP response. The login service function returns the currently logged in user embedded in the response. Now let's take a look at how the server can handle the HTTP requests from the React web application. In particular, we'll take a look at the user controller handling login HTTP request. The user controller is responsible for handling all HTTP requests regarding user operations, such as login, sign up, and log out. Let's focus on how to handle the login operation. The login HTTP handler function parses the credentials from the request's body posted by the login service function from the React web application. We pass the credentials to the find user by credentials function in the DAO to check if there's a user with that username and password. If the credentials are good, then the user is saved in the session's current user property so we can remember who is currently logged in subsequent requests. If the user exists, we respond with the current user, or with 403 otherwise. The DAO is responsible for interacting with the database. The find user by credentials function tries to find a record in the database that matches the username and password posted by the user interface. The controller is instantiated and configured when the server is first initialized in app.js. The controller must be configured after configuring cars, session, and express.json parser. Make sure all controllers are configured last as shown here. Cars must be configured to work with cookies credentials, and the domain where the user interface must be whitelisted. The session must be configured to encrypt the cookie. The user records are stored in a Mongo database. Use Mongoose to connect to Mongo and interact with the database programmatically. The user records stored in the database include fields username and password used for login in as shown here. Mongoose models provide low-level functions to interact with a Mongo database. Let's now take a look at how the React web app can handle the response from the server. The user service had sent the login HTTP request and was waiting for the controller to respond. If the login succeeded, the logged-in user is in the response's data. The login service function returns the logged-in user embedded in the HTTP response. The login thunk was waiting for the login service function to complete. Once the login HTTP request completes, the login thunk returns whatever the login service function returns and puts it in the reducer payload. In this case, the login service function returns the currently logged in user, and so it is added to the reducer payload. In the reducer, when the login thunk is fulfilled, the action contains the currently logged in user. In the payload, we copy the currently logged in user from the payload into the current user state variable to make available to all the React components. The login screen can extract the current user and navigate to the profile screen if the login was successful. Profile screen can select the current user from the reducer, greet the logged in user, and show any information related to the current user. Profile screen greets the current user.